Welcome everyone. We're going to be doing a Nguro card review today, and we're going to be starting off with Hunter and some theory crafted decks for Hunter. So, first off, let's talk about the quest. So the Hunter quest is the Marsh Queen. It's to play 7 1-cost minions, and the reward is Queen Carnassa. Queen Carnassa is a 5 mana 8/8 that shuffles 15 Raptors into your deck. The Raptors are 3/2s. Sorry, I'm trying to find the Carnassa here. The Raptors are 3/2s that have draw a card. So yeah, so that's Queen Carnassa. Shuffle 15 Raptors into your deck. And each one of those Raptors is a 1 mana 3/2 that has Battle Cry, draw a card. So, there's 2 different approaches to take for this quest. First off, there's the spam 1-drops, almost entirely play 1-drops idea to get out Queen Carnassa as early as possible. Because Carnassa is a 5 mana 8/8, she's pretty powerful, and you can fill in a lot of the mana that you would be wasting with hero powers, so it's like a very aggressive strategy to go with that for Hunter. We see the first deck on the left here is very much following that strategy. That's like full, well, 23 1-drops basically, because we have double tracking and the Marsh Queen. So I mean, there's 26 1-cost cards. So there's a nice tool for actually calculating percentages, and we'll bring this up here quick. So if we had like 10 1-drops, we would only have an 80% chance of completing the quest by turn 12, which is not really great. That means the Raptors are really just filling up our deck so we don't fatigue. But in any kind of aggressive mid-range Hunter strategy, that's not really going to be a problem, right? Fatigue is not really the issue. So we don't really, also, I mean, you actually draw a card every time you play it. So it just gives you ability to constantly reflood the board, but I'm actually not sure that that alone is strong enough. So if we take this up to 23, which is the amount of 1-drops we had, you can see all of a sudden we have basically 100% by turn 6. So that means on turn 6 we can almost always expect to play 1-drop plus Queen Carnassa. So now we're talking about an 8/8 on turn 6, which is really, really strong. And this is not actually accounting for the sort of extra card draw you get from tracking. So tracking is really strong with this quest for completing the quest, so to actually get the quest completed, and post the quest in order to filter out the 1-drops you don't really want anymore. Because after you complete the quest, you just want to keep chain drawing the Raptors in order to just flood the board as much as possible. So if we look at it, we have a 94% chance by turn 6 to complete the quest here, and about a 60% chance by turn 5. So that's pretty good. This is probably one of the best ways to rush the quest. This is sort of most of the 1-drops we have in the set, well, like available to us really. It's like pretty much the best of the 1-drops is basically just all shoved into this deck with the best ability to sort of fight for board and stuff. And a big MVP in this deck is Firefly, because its Battle Cry gives you a 1/2. It basically counts for double in terms of having 1-drops in your deck, because by drawing it, you're essentially drawing 2 1-drops, because you can play it and then play the extra 1-drop that it puts in your hand. So Firefly is a big MVP for this quest, and actually quite an MVP for a number of decks, I think. I think it's definitely going to be a card we're probably going to see quite a bit. I'll get onto it later when we get onto the neutrals. But yeah, so that's at least talking about the quest. If we go down to this second list and we look at the fact that this has 19 1-drops, so minus the 2 trackings and the 1 Marsh Queen, we're talking 16 1-drops. This deck sits at probably guaranteed completing the quest by turn 12, which is a bit late for the 8/8 because you've probably lost board by then because you're only playing crappy 1-drops. So we're looking at, let's say turn 7 as a reasonably reliable success rate. And then in the late game, we pretty much just have Tolvia Wardens. Or in this, the second list, we have the Tundra Rhinos, the Houndmasters, the Kill Commands, the Animal Companions, and the High Mains. Yeah. So this list has a bit more gas to it. Like in the mid stages of the game, it can fight for board a bit more aggressively. Or it can fight for board with a bit more value, I would say. Whereas like the first list, only running the high mains and then just the wardens to draw more 1-drops. It's basically just high main is a really valuable card. So if you play that against some of the control decks that have answers for the 1-drops, they might not have answer for the high main too. So you know, getting that to smash through and then have your board flooded with Raptors and a high main is pretty strong. So that's why high main is sort of consistently in all of these decks, really. Yeah, and then the third deck we have is more of a mid-range deck. So in this one, I'll talk a little bit more about the decks just now, but I'm just looking at the 1-drop or the Queen Conassa quest percentages. So in this deck we have 14 1-drops, so well 14 1-cost cards, so minus the 3, we're sitting on 11. So you can see how the probability drops quite a lot as we reduce the number of 1-drops in the deck. Which kind of means that this quest is really encouraging, to be honest, a really crappy deck. No deck with this many 1-drops in would be a good deck for any reason other than the quest. So I'm not a big fan of this. I was hoping that we could do the quest in a way that was basically just a mid-range list that had just enough 1-drops. So we're talking 5 or 6, and the Raptor Hatchling, which gives you extra 1-drops we'll talk about just now. But yeah, so I'm a little bit disappointed in this quest, let's say. I'm gonna give cards ratings out of 5 on 2 counts for like flavor and viability. So if we look at Marsh Queen, which, you know, we have to look at the quests to see what the class is really trying to do in this set. And I think if we look at Marsh Queen, it's probably around a 4 for viability. And I have to kind of give it a low score for flavor because I really just don't feel like this. I like the reward. I love the cantripping raptors. I'm just not a very big fan of the deck building that it encourages in this quest. So I'm kind of just going to give it like a 2 for flavor, to be honest. Yeah. So yeah, I think Marsh Queen and the viability of the quest is going to be the major thing that we're going to see in bringing Hunter back into the meta in a very zooey, very board floody style. It just doesn't have the Warlock hero power, which has traditionally been so good with Zoo. I mean, a quest like this in Warlock would just be like stupidly broken. Yeah. Okay, so let's see, what do we have next? We have, let's deal with Swamp King Dread. So Swamp King Dread, 7 mana 9/9. After your opponent plays a minion, attack it. So this is good for the mid-range hunter decks, but is very at odds with the Marsh Queen quest itself, right? So yeah, so the Marsh Queen quest doesn't really synergize with Swamp King Dread. In the third deck list here, we have Swamp King Dread as sort of a late game option in the list, but I think overall we're probably not going to see that much play from Swamp King Dread unless the quest is rubbish, and then maybe in some mid-range hunter decks it's, you know, further way to curve out after high main, because traditionally hunter has often just gone high main into high main on 6 and 7, and this gives hunter a different option at least. So for viability, I'm probably going to give it a 3. And for flavor, you know, I mean, this is a dinosaur themed set, so I'm going to give it a 4 for flavor. Okay, so next we have Dinomancy. On stream we saw this be really powerful, giving a beast +2/+2, but when building decks I tried to fit it into some of these decks, but it really just, it's awkward, right? A lot of the time you want to be aggressive with Hunter, so your hero power is pretty good for that. And at best case scenario, most of the time this translates into 2 damage on their face if you buff your minion, right? But then your hero power becomes conditional. So your hero power can only deal damage to them if you have a minion on board and if that minion is a beast. So obviously the best case scenario is that this hero power is used to contest the board and net you more damage overall. I mean, as a hero power alone, giving +2/+2 to a beast is would be a very strong hero power, but you know, it's going to suffer from, in a lot of these decks, it's going to suffer from when you lose the board, you don't really want to be spending your mana on that. And I'm not sure there's actually enough 1-mana beasts to make the real 1-mana flood decks worth it. Next we have Dynamancy. I think on flavor, I like what they're trying to do with the Hunter hero power and try and make it more value orientated. So I'm going to give it like a 4 for flavor. And for viability, I'm going to give it a 2. I don't really see it being all that viable unless the quest decks are dead and we only maybe have some mid-range hunter that wants to take it into the late game with value. Okay, and next we have Stampede. So Stampede is a 1-mana spell. Each time you play a beast this turn, add a random beast to your hand. So this is essentially the lock and load for minions, and particularly beasts, right? So the idea is you could play this with some of the smaller beasts that you were playing in order to get the quest, and then they can actually reload your hand so you don't just run out of resources. I have Stampede 1 copy of in the 3rd deck here. I think it might have some situational use. There are a lot of beasts in the set, being sort of dinosaur themed as it is. So I think that Stampede could definitely be playable in some decks, but is going to have a very niche perspective, right? Because, or like niche role, because there are actually just a lot of bad beasts to get, you know. If you're just getting angry chickens off this, like we saw on stream, it's actually just not going to be that strong. Definitely could be quite a fun card, and you know, the problem is you have to sort of hold a bunch of minions in your hand and then play Stampede in one turn. And obviously Stampede is only 1 mana, so you know, if it was more, that would be more awkward. But it was the same problem we kind of saw with lock and load, right? Is if you're not using the things like the minions or spells when they're best to use them, and you're just saving them up for some value later, then often you're just gonna fall behind and get into a really bad position, and that's even more true for minions than it is for spells. So next we have, sorry, I keep forgetting to rate. So Stampede, I think, is probably 5 for flavor. I really like the idea. You know, the art is really cool for it as well. The stampeding dinosaurs. I mean, it just makes a lot of sense, right? Beast Stampede. Yeah. So I like it for flavor. And I love the idea of like those big turns where you play it and you play a bunch of beasts and you get some cool stuff, and then you know, you got to then set your game plan. So I really like the flavor of Stampede. And for viability, though, I'm probably only going to give it a 2. Actually, maybe a 3, because sometimes with maybe in some niche quest decks it could help. The decks that aren't running too many of the 1-drops and mostly just focusing on beasts. Okay, so next we have Torvia Warden. Torvia Warden, 5 mana 3/5 that draws you 2 1-cost minions from your deck as its battle cry. This is pretty good, obviously, for accomplishing the quest. I mean, we see it 2 copies of it in all these decks that I made, and it's pretty strong. I think that drawing 2 cards from a 5-mana card is pretty strong. I mean, we've seen a Zerdrake with being a 4/4 for 5 that draws you a card, pretty good. These 2 1-cost cards are probably not as valuable as just drawing a card from Zerdrake, right? But they do have specific synergy with the quest, and they help thin out your deck so you don't get the 1-drops on your natural draws. And draws obviously been a big problem for Hunter, so I think Torvia Warden could well be playable in a lot of these decks. It helps, it definitely helps a lot with the quest, and it helps you not having to go all in just putting 1-drops in your deck, which is, you know, something I really like. it's like a tutor for quests for this. I mean, for one drops for this quest. So I think on both, well, on flavor, I'm gonna give it a 5, to be honest, and on playability, probably a 4, only because without the quest, I'm not sure it's playable. I definitely think though that it will be pretty strong. With some of the one drops we're seeing here, they're actually pretty good. So it might even be playable in non-quest decks. Okay, next we have Terascale Stalker. Terascale Stalker is a 3-mana 3/3 with Battle Cry, trigger a friendly minion's Death Rattle. So we've already seen this effect before in Princess Huhurun, and that really wasn't good enough, to be honest. And we've seen a lot of some of the strong, well, one of the strongest Death Rattles being Sylvanas, rotating out when Unguro releases. So Terascale Stalker, I don't really think it has a great place, right? I mean, the dream is to play Kindly Grandmother into Terascale Stalker, but I'm really not sold that that's good enough. You know, they're definitely trying to push Death Rattle Hunter, and this is something to help it along, but I don't think it's going to be good enough. I don't think it's good enough stats to curve out for Hunter as well. So I'm going to give it just a 1 on the viability, to be honest. I just don't see any place for this in any real decks, and a 2 for flavor, because they essentially just copied a legendary and made it smaller. So I'm really not a big fan of that. Raptor Hatchling is next. We have another 1-drop to help with the quest. It's a 1-mana 2/1 with Death Rattles. Shuffle a 4/3 Raptor into your deck. It's a beast as well, and so the Raptor that it shuffles into your deck is a 1-mana 4/3, so that's another way to help with the quest. So like Torvia Warden, Raptor Hatchling allows you to play less 1-drops and still get to the 7 1-drops required for the quest. We can see it in particular, well, actually, I mean, I have 2 copies of it in all these decks. I'm not sure it's necessarily that good in the one where you just flood with 1-drops, because putting the extra 1-drops in your deck is a little unnecessary. When you actually just want to chain draw the Raptors, the Raptors you get from Queen Carnassa later. So Raptor Hatchling, I think is pretty good in a lot of the other mid-range and less all-in decks that are going for the quest. I think, you know, getting the 4/3s with the Torvia Warden is in particular pretty strong, but obviously you have to have quite a few 1-drops in your deck. So that doesn't really work. Like, you're not going to reliably get the 4/3s unless you literally just play like 2 Raptor Hatchlings and Torvia Warden, right? And then your Raptor Hatchlings die early, and then your Torvia Warden is drawing you 1-mana 4/3s, which is relatively strong for like a tempo play, in particular for a later turn, or like for use with Stampede, right? If you're running beasts. So if you have like 1-drops that are, all your 1-drops are beasts, let's say, you can go like Torvia Warden, and the next turn you Stampede, and you spam out your 1-drops, and you get a bunch of card draw, which is, or like pseudo card draw, because you're adding random beasts to your hand, which is okay. Random beasts aren't great in this, aren't going to be too great, but yeah, it's definitely not bad. It's a way for hunters to generate resources in the late game, which is something they've always struggled with. Okay, next we have Crackling Razormaw. It's a 2-mana 3/2 beast with Battle Cry, adapter-friendly beast. So this is great for curving out after your 1-drops. The big problem with Crackling Razormaw is that if you're playing the quest, you have to play the quest on turn 1, which then means that your turn 2, you don't actually have anything on the board. So only if you're on the coin and you can play quest, coin, 1-drop, and then Crackling Razormaw on 2, the curve is a bit awkward. So a lot of the time it's probably going to be in quest heavy decks, like let's say the third deck I have here, you're going to be playing something like Marsh Queen Quest on 1, then 2 1-drops on 2, and then maybe a 1-drop plus a Crackling Razormaw on 3. I'm not sure that Crackling Razormaw is going to be worth it. I think one of the really strong adaptations is the 2/1/1 plants. That works really well with Crackling Razor. Well, with like the zooey, board floody style that a deck like that could be going for. So, yeah, so Crackling Razormaw, I think I'm going to give it a 3 for playability and um, a 4 for flavor. I like that it encourages. It's another way to reward players for having beasts on the board. It's not just Houndmaster. You know, that it gives you some extra things to play around. I'm not a big fan of the adapt mechanic. I think that's too many options to reliably, when you're only getting one adaptation, to have any reliable expectations about what the result is going to be. So I'm a little hesitant on adapt cards in general. And then Raptor Hatchling I also forgot to rate, so I'd say it's about a 4 for viability because it's good in the quest and good outside of the quest deck with some 12-year ward and synergy on the Death Rattled Raptor. And I like the flavor. I'm a big fan of the fact that you can see in the background of the tiny raptor, there's like a giant raptor, and that's the one that you get as the image for the 4/3 raptor. So like, I'm a huge fan of that like flavor that they've added there. So I think for flavor, I'm going to give it a 5. I think that's really cool. Just a little trick they've done with the art to, you know, emphasize what the card actually does, and that's pretty cool. Sorry, I'm just trying to. So we have Raptor Patriarch. Here you can see it is. You can see the tiny little raptor in the front there, just below the Raptor Patriarch, in pretty much the same way that you can see the Raptor Patriarch in the background of the Raptor Hatchling. So that's really cool. Okay, next we have Grievous Bite. It's a hunter spell, 2 mana, deal 2 damage to a minion and 1 damage to adjacent ones. So hunters are losing Quick Shot, so that's one spell they have to control the board. Grievous Bite is kind of like a small swipe mixed in with the Power Shot. Power Shot never really saw play, and you'd probably pay 1 more mana to deal 2 to the extra minions. So maybe Grievous Bite helps contest for board in the floody decks, but I mean, I have it in none of my decks. I don't really see where its place is going to be unless the meta is heavy Zoo and Hunter. Like, it's great in the mirror at times. Yeah, it's definitely going to take a very specific meta for Grievous Bite to be playable. So I'm going to give Grievous Bite a 2 on playability and a 3 on flavor, because I like kind of what it does. It's an interesting, it's a further thing to use the like adjacent minions and to make, you know, positioning matter. So I like that. Jeweled Mccall. This is a 1 mana 1/1 beast with battle cry, add a random beast to your hand. So basically the babbling book for beasts. I mean, it's great in for accomplishing the quest because you get a 1-drop that has some extended value to it. Random beasts, it still remains to be seen exactly how they shape up after this release, because to be honest, there's a lot of beasts in this set. So the average value of beasts has probably gone down a little bit, I think. But we're going to have to see. I mean, there's the high rolls of getting the Druid Legendary Tyrantus, obviously, assuming you can ever play it. Like before you win the game as like an aggro hunter, right? So yeah, Jeweled Mccall is pretty good. I'm gonna give it a 5 for playability. I think most hunter decks will be happy to play it, and a 4 or 3 for flavor, because essentially it's just babbling book for druids. I mean, babbling book for hunters, right? So that's not that exciting. Yeah, so overall I think hunter is gonna be somewhat meta defining. If the Marsh Queen quest is reliable, if we're talking about these decks where you can guarantee get the Marsh Queen quest on turn 6, then having a 5 mana 8/8 on turn 6 and filling your deck with you know, these cantripping raptors is going to be pretty strong. It could definitely define what other decks are viable, and it could definitely be a sort of a central point in the meta that other decks have to take notice of when they're building their decks. So you know, I'm a little worried about this because I don't really like the direction it takes Hunter. But but it remains to be seen. Yeah, so we're gonna have to see whether what happens with the Hunter Quest. I think it's gonna be a telling sign as to what's viable in the other classes as well, because some classes are really not able to deal with this board flood strategy very well. Like in particular, Rogue a lot of the time. Yeah, so that's all for Hunter. It's going to be very important, and like we're going to see a lot of experimentation with Hunter in the early days of Nguro. So yeah, that's all for Hunter. Thanks for watching. Stick around for the rest of the videos. Like, subscribe, all those things. I'm not going to spam that after every video. So yeah, this is just theory crafting, so I might be wrong about a lot of things, but yeah. One more thing I suppose I should mention about this third deck is it does have quite a bit of beast synergy. So we're talking like Scavenging Hyena gets a lot of value from like the alley cats and the raptors trading before. So that's an interesting thing that might be useful. There's also Tundra Rhino, obviously, especially with the battle cry draw a card raptors from that Conassus spawns or puts in your deck. We can see, you know, you're cantripping raptor after raptor after raptor, which is pretty sick if they have charge as well. So yeah, I'm definitely going to be messing around with Hunter when it comes out. Hopefully I will open Marsh Queen so that I can test that. But even if not, I will probably end up crafting it because I think it's going to be pretty strong. And you know, I think we're definitely going to see Hunter come back in some way or the other. I think like they've got enough early game now that they can definitely fight for the board early game, which is really what they were missing. Yeah, so so Hunter's going to be pretty good. That's all I have to say for Hunter.